gives me great pleasure to ask Barbara Elena to unmute herself and deliver her sermon on the Parashah Re'eh.
Before Moshe Rabbeinu dies on Mount Nebo at the end of the Torah, in this week's Parsha Re'eh, he tells the people, "See, this day I set before you blessing and curse. Blessing if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, and curse if you do not obey the commandments, but turn away from the path that I enjoin upon you this day." Moshe Rabbeinu saw a path ahead in the promised land, filled with worship of false gods, acquisitions, and consumptions that are abhorrent and uncharitable. He could only have this clarity with enough distance to view the wholeness of the promised land, as when we step back from a painting for perspective. With this perspective, Moses saw what was in store. He understood the people needed to have a clear mindset regarding values and priorities before crossing the Jordan River and entering into a different kind of social group. He must have realized that human nature being what it is, this wouldn't be an easy transition. He warns there will be options as to how to think and what to do. Moses sets the bar high for the Israelites, who have been enslaved and freed and had a long, arduous journey full of sacrifice and hardship. He wants them to know there will be temptations and choices between unholy influences and those of an ethical, morally just society based on values of virtue, compassion, respect for one another, and responsibility toward those less fortunate. Again and again in Torah, our prayers and meditations begin with hear, listen. Through our observances and rituals, we stop our daily lives. We listen for the voice of God. We think and we pray through words. Speech is sacred. We have the gift of language, and we are admonished as to the holiness of the spoken word. Yet, in Parsha Re'eh, the first word is see, as if to say we more fully hear through the wholeness of sight. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks suggests that Moshe Rabbeinu shows greatness of true leadership, not defined by military or political power, but by morality informed by responsible choices. Great leaders accept the responsibility to frame reality for the group. What Moses is doing in Parsha Re'eh is defining reality for the generation he led out of Egypt and the next, and for all generations. He knows that once the Jordan River is crossed, there will be distractions. The big picture gets lost as we busy ourselves with the busyness of life. Moses sees the divergent paths available, and he wants the people to see and to choose beforehand. The blessing of life, if you obey commandments of our God, and the curse, if you disobey and turn to other gods. Choose life, that you and your offspring may live. In today's reality, leadership is a myriad of fluid, shape-shifting images and ideas and words unimaginable in scope of influence, full of enticements, false promises, worship at the altars of greed, hatred, ignorance, and increasingly rooted in personal agenda devoid of the principles of a free, just, moral, and healthy society. It is a path filled with desire for personal gain, and it is chosen by many. This leads us to complex domains of crisis, one of which has to do with the relationship between what is legal and what is ethical. The law is a rule of conduct established and enforced by an authority. It serves a regulatory function, and it rests on assumptions of predictability. Legal accountability is between a group or individual and the state. Ethical responsibilities exist between people in a spirit of reciprocity based on values of right and wrong. Ethics and the law can exist in direct conflict with each other. Ethics can compel unlawful conduct, or the law can compel unethical acts. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the law. In 1817, Henry David Thoreau articulates a view of selective noncompliance with the law. He says, "If a law requires you to be the agent of injustice to another, then I say, break the law." So many great leaders have lived by this principle. We just lost John Lewis, and recently at Kol Shalom, we heard Judy Heumann's incredible story. A disturbing conflict between what is legal and what is ethical is occurring incredibly around the issue of wearing a mask. In the absence of a regulatory mandate, this remains in the realm of choice. It is legal not to wear a mask. But given the potential for widespread lethality of this one choice, it is incontrovertibly unethical. Where is the leader who will clearly frame this reality? In the final parsha of the Torah, Moses' last words as our leader and teacher is entitled Ha'azinu, vision. Our vision today as a nation is getting murky. Laws are being changed so as to merge with what is unethical. We anxiously bear witness as our leadership works to alter the legal foundation of the post office in support of a morally corrupt vision. If this is achieved, the competing principles between what is ethical and what is legal are reduced, mandating a third entity that stands in terse opposition to the entirety of this unholy merge. We need to vote. And with the help of God, we will find a way that our votes are counted. Most of us aspire to be morally centered people who do both what is legal and ethical. We follow the law and we honor the dignity and the rights of others. We choose to affiliate with groups that direct themselves to these values. We each in our own ways and together as a group strive to do the right thing. Yet here we are, together on Zoom for nearly 6 months, quarantined from each other and from the world around us. A virus is unleashed, a curse really, that likely arose from an unsustainable way of life. The disruption of naturally occurring ecosystems, the devastation of biodiversity and unsafe consumption of wild animals, the destruction of environments that force wildlife into unnatural habitats, and rising conditions of social and economic inequity around the globe. We don't know what new viruses might be hiding in the melting Arctic permafrost or in other climate change-induced conditions. We grieve the terrible loss, the terrible human and environmental losses that bring us to this moment. More than ever, we need leaders who offer moral perspectives and definitions of reality with intention to provide beneficence and commonality of purpose toward a greater good for this generation and those to come. We see what Moses meant then, and we hear the message today. Choose life. There is still time, and so there is hope. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Barbara, for an incredibly thoughtful commentary. And let's not forget that as the people of Moses, we have a huge responsibility. We have a burden on our shoulders. Thank you again, Barbara.